So oftentimes, if I'm there really late and I have to be up really early, I'll just sleep there because there's plenty of rooms for me to do so. So I was sleeping or trying to, and it's close to midnight. And I full on felt something get into the big king size bed next to me. And at that point, we had a couple paranormal groups come through, and they said, if anything ever makes you uncomfortable, just tell them to leave you alone, and they will. So that's what I did. I was like, just leave me alone. And I threw the blanket over my head and tried to get some sleep, and I did feel like it dissipated. But then a couple hours later, and I'm dead asleep at this point, the entire curtain rod ripped out of the wall. Huge crash to the floor. I hadn't really told anyone about that except my maintenance guy. And when we were comparing stories, my overnight innkeeper would stay there all the time. She goes, well, this one night I was sleeping and I felt something get into bed with me and lay with me. And I said, you're shitting me.
From the dawn of the spoken word, storytelling has been the backbone of human culture, warning of looming dangers and evoking our most personal fears. What you're about to hear are the real-life experiences of everyday people, brave enough to share their terrifying tales. Tales where the horror hits close to home. I'm your host, Danny. Welcome to the Hometown Horrors Podcast. Listen, if you dare. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We are the Hometown Horrors Podcast, and today we have on Sarah, who is a veteran of the hospitality industry. Hospitality meaning, of course, like hotels, bed and breakfasts, places you stay when you're on a trip. She also runs her own bed and breakfast in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which apparently is very, very haunted. She also, in addition to that, has her own podcast based around the hospitality industry called The Insiders, where she and her co-host Rob talk to other people that work in the industry about their crazy stories and crazy happenings. Anyway, getting right to it, I'm so excited to hear these stories.
Yeah, thank you so much. Rob and I divide and conquer. He does the lion's share of the work for sure. He does all the editing and a lot of the online promoting and everything. I manage a hotel, so I'm like crazy busy. It's the Sayer Mansion in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and we were on an episode of Ghost Hunters because our property is got quite a bit of activity. So the way that happened is when I first started there and started experiencing paranormal things, I kind of went to the owners and was like, hey, can I host like a paranormal dinner? I want like investigators to come through here and verify that there's stuff happening here. And they were a little hesitant at first. But I partnered with a paranormal group and, with Ghost Hunters having a huge draw, the Discovery Channel and everything, they kind of have these feeler groups across the country. And one of those groups tipped them off like, hey, you guys should go do a story here. So when the Discovery Channel reached out to us, I think my owner's tune changed a bit, like, oh, there is something here, They were concerned that like guests wouldn't want to stay. And that has happened for sure. People have checked in and been like, what do you mean you guys offer ghost tours? Or what do you mean you've been on the Ghost Hunters? And they don't like it, but it's such a small percentage. And thankfully at our property, the activity really seems to stick to only a couple areas. Like you could stay in a room and not have an experience at all, just because for some reason, whatever energy is still there, it's really, really like prone to certain areas, which is interesting.
Do you feel like there's an obligation to provide a spooky experience, or is it just like, do guests understand that, hey, it might not be an active night?
Yeah, I offer ghost tours, and I'm always just hopeful that they come through and want to chat, and they always have. I would be pretty bummed if like nothing happened. I do kind of feel an obligation, but it's not up to me if there's activity or not. But thankfully, they're usually pretty chatty when there's a group of people around with a REM pod or some other devices. And then we have a whole other segment of guests that call and they want the haunted rooms. One call will be like, don't put me in a haunted room. And then the next call is like, are there any haunted rooms available for the night I'm staying? So, but yeah, I've been there about 5 years. When I first started, I needed a picture frame because I was hosting a little wine and cheese mixer in the basement and I wanted to frame the sign detailing what the event was. So I went downstairs into the basement and I was in front of a box that was full of picture frames and I was kind of rifling through them and something tugged on my pants pocket. And a lot of people that have had close encounters with spirits will say that they get a cold feeling. And I had never had a close encounter like this. It was so cold, it felt like there was electricity in my bones. My pocket gets tugged on. I get this overall sensation of like pins and needles times 1,000. And I ran up those basement stairs so fast. I think I took 4 stairs at a time. A couple members of the staff were upstairs and they saw me kind of tear out of the basement. And I didn't want to seem like a crazy person. Like I had just started there, you know? And I'm like, hey, so has there ever been any reports of ghosts here or anything? And they're all laughing and they're like, yeah. Didn't they talk about that in your interview? Or like, didn't you do any research like online before you started here? And I researched the place a lot, but none of the ghosty stuff came up until I really started looking for it. It's a 160-year-old building, and it never even occurred to me that that was something to think about. I've managed properties for going on 12 years, and landing a beautiful bed and breakfast is, I think, the dream of a lot of hotel managers. When I got the job, when I even applied for the job, I was so excited. And then landing it was just like a dream come true. And I never, ever thought to ask, no other ghosts in the building. So that was my first experience there. And that's what kind of got me interested in inviting paranormal investigators to come through. And they've been wonderful. Like they bring all sorts of equipment and things always happen. A lot of thermal images will capture clearly an icy figure, head and shoulders, body, the right height and everything. And it'll be there 1 second and not the next. And it's so terrifying. It's like, it shouldn't be, because none of the spirits there are harmful. They're not like scratching us or pushing us down the stairs or anything. They're just there. But to experience those things and then see an actual representation of that spirit on a thermal camera is really crazy. One of the first groups to come through brought Polaroid cameras, and they were snapping some pictures downstairs. So they were picking up icy spots on the thermal. And so one of the paranormal members said to the other, like, hey, point the Polaroid camera over there and snap pictures. So they did. And I have the Polaroids in my office. They're all hazy. It looked like smoke. And I didn't have any sort of experience with any of this. I've definitely got an education since I've had so many paranormal groups come through. I know the different equipment and, you know, why they use certain things in certain areas. It's all fascinating, but I never thought that a Polaroid camera would pick up something that we wouldn't see with our own eyes. And even when they were taking those photos, we all just felt something. What is it that we've lost over time? That like tribal instinct or something, like, hey, there's something else here. We can't put our finger on it. We can't explain it, but let's just start taking pictures. And then it just confirmed, like, yeah, there was something in that space with us. And that's why we all felt that feeling. And I tell people this on ghost tours, like, if you experience something, you don't have to tell me about it, because I have to work here every day. So I go back and forth on, do I really want this confirmation? Do I really want to see the evidence that you can't deny? But at the end of the day, like I said, they're not harming me. It's just their house. They were there first. The mansion was built, like I said, 160 years ago, and the owner of the home built it for his family. And he ended up having 4 wives while he lived there. So the first 3 wives died, and then he died in the house. 3 of the children died in the house. One of the children was 4 years old. And that is what we think occupies the basement area. You know, tugging on my pocket was something very playful that a kid would do. And when the ghost hunters were there, one of the most compelling pieces of evidence that they captured, in my opinion, didn't even make it to air on the show. And the show title is called The Sayer Specters, but they did capture a man's voice in the basement, but they also captured a child's voice, clear as day, saying, hey, can you catch this? And they have you sit down and they reveal all of the evidence that they've captured with you. And they had me listen to that voice clip, I don't know, 12 times. And I still hear it. I still get goosebumps. I'm literally sitting here getting goosebumps right now, because I know something tugged on my pocket and got close to me where I felt like electricity. And then it was like I was hearing that child's voice. And that is just freaky, for lack of a better term. It is just freaky.
It's like now there's an identity tied to it. Like this thing might actually know me at this point.
Exactly. And it's funny you mention that because the paranormal teams will always ask a bunch of questions of the spirits that come through, and they'll ask, do you like what Sarah is doing here at the mansion? And I'm always like, yo, keep my name out of it. We
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
we don't
Don't
need to ask those
don't talk about
questions.
me to the ghost. Come on.
What are you doing? And for the most part, they have said yes. And I think about this mansion is Victorian times, and the lady of the house in those times kind of ran everything. She, managed the cooks and the housekeepers and the landscapers. And that's kind of what I do. That's my role there now. So I think that they see me as the lady of the house. I hope they do. And I hope they realize how much I love the place. But they don't like when we do renovations. They don't like when big crowds are there. And the paranormal teams that have come through and they've asked that, like, do you like what's happening here with the house? Do you like when there's a lot of people here? And they say no through a REM pod or a voice box. And I think about that too. Like, this was their family home. And now we have so many people in and out of there all the time that it's probably a little uncomfortable for them if they're still kind of watching what's happening. When the ghost hunters reached out to us, they said, well, all right, we'll start talking to your staff or your guests that have had experiences so we can kind of call them and see who wants to talk about it on the show. And this is another thing that was just so damn freaky. So I had an experience in one of the rooms, and I'll tell that story, and then I'll explain why it was so crazy when we all started sharing stories just to get on the same page with the ghost hunters. So oftentimes, if I'm there really late for like a wedding and I have to be up really early for breakfast service, I don't want to drive all the way home and go back. I'll just sleep there because there's plenty of rooms for me to do so. And I was sleeping in my favorite room, which is a room on the first floor, and it still has the original owner's office completely intact, like attached to the room. It's a really cool little space. So I was sleeping or trying to, and it's close to midnight, and I full on felt something get into the big king size bed next to me. Like, I felt the weight of someone next to me, and I almost experienced what felt like respiration, like someone breathing in and out next to you. And at that point, we had a couple paranormal groups come through, and they said, if anything ever makes you uncomfortable, just tell them to leave you alone, and they will, usually. So that's what I did. I was like, just leave me alone. And I like threw the blanket over my head and tried to get some sleep, and I did feel like it dissipated. But then a couple hours later, and I'm dead asleep at this point, the entire curtain rod ripped out of the wall. There are 2-3 screws on either curtain bracket on either side of the curtain rod. And it wasn't like, oh, maybe one screw was loose and it fell. This was ripped out of the wall. It was away from the wall, a good foot, both sides. And I am the manager, so I'm always like checking to make sure everything is safe and secure. And I had closed the curtains that night before I went to bed. I would have noticed if the curtain brackets were loose, and they weren't. So, huge crash to the floor, and it's like 3 a.m, and I
3
just
a.m.
got up and ran out of that room. Yeah, the witching hour, right? I didn't sleep a wink the rest of the night. I wouldn't go back in the room. I waited until my maintenance guy came in the morning and said, can you go look at this with me and just confirm that, like, I'm not crazy, and like help me get my things out of the room. Like, I still go in that room, but I will never sleep in that room ever again. So joking with me, like, oh, the man of the house was trying to get in bed with you and you wouldn't let him, so he ripped the curtain out of the wall. I was like, maybe, maybe he thought I was his fifth wife or something. But so I hadn't really told anyone about that except my maintenance guy. And when we were comparing stories, when, the show was about to come and they wanted to screen people, my overnight innkeeper would stay there all the time. She would sleep on site. And if a guest had a need in the middle of the night, they call the overnight innkeeper. So up on the 3rd floor in one of the rooms that's really haunted, she goes, well, this one night I was sleeping and I felt something get into bed with me and lay with me. And I said, you're shitting me. And again, like, you get those goosebumps because how did we both have the same experience? We never told each other about it. And that just completely floored me. I couldn't believe that she had that same experience. So I have to wonder if, like, our guests are having that experience and it's just not saying anything because they probably think they sound crazy, but it's happening there. I don't know. They're climbing in bed with us at night. That was probably the most aggressive thing that's ever happened. We did have a guest that we have like decorative throw pillows on the beds, and she had put it by her feet. And she said the next morning it was clear across the room. And I said, well, do you kick in your sleep maybe? She's like, that's not what I'm saying. I felt like there was something in my room all night and I didn't sleep very well. And she's like, and then I woke up and that was clear across the room. And we get a lot of reports about phones and devices being messed with. And if I'm a Victorian entity, I don't know what a phone is or what a laptop is. And maybe I'm curious, if they're touching your phone or your laptop, I'm sure the energy that they expel is messing with that device.
Messed with in the way of like maybe taking off chargers in the night, or just opened, like say a laptop's open and placed on like a piece of furniture it wasn't on?
Yeah, so they'll be knocked off the nightstands, or they won't have charged all night, or they'll wake up with like random photos on their camera roll of like the ceiling. One guy, he came down to the desk in the morning and he's like, I heard this place was haunted, and you're going to laugh. He goes, but here's what happened last night. He goes, I kept hearing a dryer, like tumbling clothes. And he goes, it was so annoying that I got up and I opened my room door and I'm looking down the hallway, like, is there a laundry room near my room? And why would they run the dryer all night and disturb the guests? He's like, it was driving me crazy. When I woke up this morning and grabbed my phone, I realized that YouTube was on and there was a dryer, like it was like a dryer sounds for sleep video that's like 12 hours long or something. He goes, I rarely use YouTube because I certainly would have never looked up like a dryer video. He's like, I have no idea how that happened. So I do think your place is haunted. I was like, yeah, okay. Just very weird, random stuff like that. We had a guest check out in the middle of the night because they felt someone standing at the foot of their bed, just kind of watching them. And I hate to see that. Like, I don't want people to be afraid. And, we explain like, well, they're not going to harm you, but they weren't comfortable staying. But that's honestly the only person I've ever had leave in the middle of the night because they were freaked out.
Do you ever have people that don't
Thankfully.
know about the stories and then they'll come there and experience something?
Yes. So they're the most excited because it'll be like they come, something happens, which will prompt them to like Google, is this mansion haunted? And then they find out that it is. And they're like, oh my gosh, I just had an experience. And they'll be like the most giddy at breakfast in the morning. Like, guess what happened last night? This. And then I looked and I realized that you guys are haunted. And oh my God, I had a paranormal experience. I'm like, yep, many of us have. Lots of like shadow figures, or they'll hear whistling is a big one at our place. The ghost hunters picked up a lot of whistling while they were there. And they'll smell like cigar smoke. The original owner of the house was a big cigar smoker, so we get that a lot. I have never experienced the cigar smoke, but a couple of my staff have. I've seen the shadow figure. There's a woman her skirt is really big, like a Victorian dress, and I came around a corner and it was there, and then it vanished, like just dissipated very quickly. And that was pretty scary. I screamed actually at the top of my lungs when that happened. My housekeeper was downstairs and like ran up. What's the matter? I'm like, nothing. She's like, did you see something? I'm like, I did. She's like, you really screamed. I'm like, I sure did. But it was their house, right? And they are intelligent because they'll respond. So one of the rooms in the mansion, the original owner built for his first wife. They had moved to the area for him to work on the railroad. He was the chief engineer, and he built this big, beautiful room for her. But then she died, and then his second wife died, then his third wife died. And like I said, 3 of the children had died, and we're assuming, if you're an ill child, you're probably in your mommy's room, right? So we think that not only did the 3 wives pass in this space, but probably some of the children. And then after he died, it was a fraternity house for a little bit, the mansion, and then it became apartments. And I spoke to a woman that lived there for 27 years when it was apartments. The mansion was apartments for about 80 years. And she detailed that one of the tenants actually took his own life. And as it turns out, his apartment included that room that was the wives' room. So you're talking just about a lot of people have passed in this relatively small space. And he comes through quite a bit. Everyone assumes that the spirits that are within the mansion are the owners. And why do we all think that ghosts are always like Victorian, right? Or like
Yeah, I mean,
But
when you think
lo
ghosts,
and
you don't
behold,
think,
there's
hey, this might be a caveman.
yeah, or like a guy that died in the 80s. But they've picked up his energy and responses quite a few times. And one of the things about him is he had a big pet bird, like an African gray, I believe, in a like 6 foot tall cage in his apartment. So we do get reports of like a bird chirping as well, which is interesting. So I guess not only is he there, but his bird is with him now too. Who knew that could happen? So there was a huge library on site when the original owner had it. He built this impressive 3-story library. He had 15,000 books. That really appealed to me when I started working there because my mom was a librarian. So I went out of my way to find some of these books. And we know that they're his books because back then when you were at a library, you'd paste a little book plate on the inside cover. So we have a couple of them, and the paranormal groups have told me that if you find something that someone really loved when they were alive, the spirits are kind of more inclined to talk to you if you have that object. And that's what we have found. So when we bust those books out, that original owner really likes to talk about his library. He likes to be around those books. So we've got 3 of them now, and we always bring them out for the paranormal investigations. And it's really crazy to see how much uptick in activity there is when he's around those objects.
Yeah, something I think about a lot and something we talked about in other episodes is just how when you have a lot of activity in a place like that, it has to be the same as it was back in the day. There are theories about ghosts that, like, they're not necessarily ghosts. It's just you seeing another point in time in that place very briefly. So in the same way that you walking around that corner, maybe seeing like that Victorian shadow, maybe you were the same thing to her. She looked around and saw a black thing come at her for a moment.
So true. I'm going to remember that for sure, because now next time I get scared, I'll be like, well, I probably scared them too.
Yeah, even the dude with his bird, like the bird probably didn't off itself in the room, I'm guessing, unless it maybe died of hunger before he was found. I don't know, but that snapshot in time thing of like maybe it's just a glitch in the matrix.
The woman I spoke to said that she thought she heard something the day before, and what she had heard was the big bird cage crashing to the floor because he was kind of stumbling around for a bit, but she didn't indicate to me if the bird had passed at that time or not. So that is interesting. I wonder if it did. But I like that idea that we're kind of all just layered timelines and there's some crossover from time to time.
But I think it can really only happen if a place is the same. I guess it's just the energy is in the walls. You mentioned earlier that they don't like renovation. Do they tend to show up less after an area has been renovated or painted?
More, like they're opposed to it. And the basement, there's a huge addition. The foundation of the library that he had built is completely surrounded by stone. The stones were set in 1898. And that's an area of like major activity. And that's what I've been told is like, well, the stone is hanging on to that energy. And here's a space, as you just said, that has not changed. Same with his original office. Like he's in that space a lot. So to your point, maybe that veil gets thin sometimes and we get to see each other in the spaces that have remained the same.
Yeah. But here's the thing, though. How do we know that we are the present? Because what we think is that we're seeing things in the past. What if there are also other things that we see, too, that might be in the future?
Yeah.
I don't really have another point to follow that up. It's just something I've thought about. Like you see some kind of robot.
I'm really pale and I have really low blood pressure. Every time I go to the doctor, they're like, and my body temperature is low, like its average is very low. So I always joke with everyone that I'm actually a ghost. So I wouldn't be surprised if I'm just another ghost at the mansion. I think my very first paranormal experience ever, I was 8 and it was me and my mom and dad. We lived in half a double. And the next door neighbor was this very elderly woman. Her name was Minnie, and she was probably 88 or 89. And it finally got to the point where her son took her to a home. And so that half of the house was empty. And my mom and I were in our side of the house one day, and we both heard clear as day someone next to us in her vacant home. And they said, "All right, are you ready to go?" And it was a man's voice. And me and my mom looked at each other and she's like, "What the heck's going on?" And she kind of felt responsible for keeping an eye on that house while it was vacant, that side of it. So we shared a big front porch and her and I went out to see if like maybe her son was over there or something. He would usually tell us when he was coming. No one was over there. And so we went back over to our side of the house and we got a phone call that she had passed. That always stuck with me. And I remember my mom talking about it with her mom, my grandma, and was like, do you think that like she was stopping by the house, like with a spirit guide or something before she was gone? Like she wanted to say goodbye to her home because she had lived there for 50 years.
Yeah, like maybe she was doing a tour of
like,
the places she loved before being ferried off to the great beyond.
Yeah, there's just no other explanation other than there was definitely someone in that space and they definitely said those words. I don't know who it was, if it was a person or a spirit, but my mom and I both heard it clear as day to the point where we looked at each other and went to investigate. It wasn't a sound that came from outside. It was from inside of her house.
I also thought it might have to do with her son taking her to the assisted living facility. Maybe it was that memory replaying in that place.
Yeah, quite possible. And then very, very vividly, I was in my childhood bedroom a few weeks after that, and I saw her walk down the hall past my room. So I screamed bloody murder, and my parents came rushing in. It was the middle of the night, and I don't know, she walked right by my room. We were pretty close. She was very sweet. I used to always go over to her side of the house and hang out with her. So there was definitely an attachment there. And I think that was just her way of like checking on me.
Was that just like a walk by the doorway, like didn't look in the room, or?
She looked right at me.
Oh,
she looked right at me and kept walking. And that's why I screamed. It was just so frightening as a child. But then nothing happened for years and years. I really didn't have any experiences. There was a little bit like when I went to college, I was staying with some friends and that house definitely had something in it. And then after I stopped staying there, they all experienced it too. And they were like, you were right. There's definitely something here. I'm like, yeah, no kidding. But not much. I mean, I was that Jersey kid who would like, there used to be this publication, Weird New Jersey, and we used to get the magazine and we'd all go to the local diner and figure out what abandoned property we were going to investigate. And so I've been to lots and lots of creepy places, but I've never really had a ton of experiences with ghosts, fortunately. And then, now it's almost once a week I have some sort of experience at work. And you do become kind of desensitized to it. Like something will fall off the wall or, a chair will move and we'll just be like the ghost. So I'm not a religious person. I don't even like to say that I'm like agnostic. I don't like any labels, right? Like I'm just nothing. But I want to believe, and I do believe that there's something after here because life is really freaking hard. So I hope that we get to do something cool when it's over. I lost my mom in 2012, 54 weeks after losing my dad. It was a rough period of time for sure. I was really, really close to my parents. My mom went into labor for me on her birthday. So like our birthdays were almost the same day. We always celebrated every year. We were just very close. And my mom got pancreatic cancer. She died at 52, like way too freaking young to die.
And that's a bad cancer too. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's just when we first figured it out and she finally got the diagnosis, they were like, you have 6 weeks. And then she lasted for 6 months because she was healthy. She was very healthy other than the stupid pancreatic cancer. So my mom, when I was a little girl, worked at a factory in our town. And my dad and I would go visit her on her lunch break. And we would sit in the car by this little stream. And there were always blue herons at this stream, which were kind of rare back then, especially in our area. It's not like we're in Florida or something. We're in like this little town in New Jersey. So I was always just enamored by these birds because they're huge, especially when you're a kid. And I hadn't seen one in years and years and years. Like after she stopped working at the factory, I never really saw them again. So fast forward to 2012, my mom died and I had a super vivid dream of her coming to me and she said, I'm going to send you a crane. Now, my mom and dad used to call these blue herons cranes because they didn't realize that they weren't cranes. They're actually blue herons, but whatever. So we always referred to these birds as cranes. So my mom comes to me in a dream. She said she's going to send me a crane. And I'm like, okay. And the next morning I woke up and I was like, damn, that was a vivid dream. And I actually looked in my backyard. I had this little water runoff. I thought man, how fucking crazy would it be if I saw a blue heron right now, right? And of course there wasn't one. And I kind of chuckled to myself, Sarah, you're insane. And then a couple weeks later, My girlfriend at the time accidentally left her keys in my car, and I was already at work, and I was like, shit, I had to drive back to give her keys. So I ended up driving back to work at a time I normally wouldn't. It's like 10 in the morning. And this freaking blue heron swooped down in front of my car so low its foot almost touched the windshield, like on a major highway.
Oh, wow.
And I pulled over. I was shaking and crying. Like, I just couldn't even believe that happened because I shouldn't have even been on the road at that time. I never was. I was always at work by 8. And she had just come to me in a dream and said, I'm going to send you this freaking bird. And that happened. So since then, I see them constantly. And again, they were kind of like endangered for a period of time in our area. They're not endangered anymore, but they're still like rare. Like, you don't see them all the time, right? And there'll be times where I'm just like having a shit day. I myself have actually had cancer twice now. It turns out my mom's cancer is genetic. So I've had some real rough days, and it's like on the toughest days, I'll freaking see a heron flying over me. Or actually at the one property I managed, there was one walking around the parking lot. Like, it made no sense. There's no water around there. Why was it there? And the whole staff came out in the parking lot. The guests were out in the parking lot like, what the hell is this bird doing here? And I'm just smiling like, I know what it's doing here. Like, how do you explain that? How
That's
do you
beautiful.
that? And then it's so special and so amazing. And I just know that it's because, like, my mom and I had this crazy bond when she was alive, and she is still with me for sure. And I even went to a medium, which I'm a huge skeptic. And even when I left the message to make the appointment, I wouldn't give my last name or anything because I figure someone can Google you, find an obituary, and be like, it's your mom that you're looking for. You know, like, I was very skeptical. I went, and she was incredible. And she encouraged me to record the session. She's like, because sometimes I'll mention things and you might not know what I'm talking about, but if you play it for your family, they might understand. And perfect example of that is she said my grandmother came through and was with a baby boy. And she's like, did you have an uncle that passed away at birth? I said, no. So right away, right off the bat, I'm like skeptical as shit. I'm like, wrong person.
Yep, she's making
you don't
things
even know
up.
what you're talking about. And lo and behold, after the session, I asked my aunt, did Nana ever have like a baby that passed? And she's like, yeah, a boy, her last child. And I was like, what?
Get
and
out.
The session got even crazier after that. This woman said, you went to your mom's house after she died and you took a bunch of her sweaters and her light jacket. And she's so happy that you took those and that you're wearing them. Like a generic statement, a mom to a daughter, what would they take? Like their jewelry or something, you know? So that would be a safe bet. Like, you went and took your mom's jewelry. No, my mom was a librarian and she had a thing for like Argyle sweaters. So she had a ton of them and I wanted them. I took some of her sweaters and her fleece Cabela's jacket that she wore all the time. Like, how did that woman know that? That doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah, that's so niche.
And then she said, your mom has been using the sky to communicate with you. So that to me was the bird. And then she also knew the breed of my childhood dog. She's like, you had a dog when you were little. She's like, it was a dash hound. She's here with us now. So come on.
Even as a skeptic, that's just so on the nose. Like,
Yeah.
I would be
And
1,000,000% a believer after that.
I am. I freaking am. And this woman has helped in a lot of cold cases. Like, I don't know. I was a huge skeptic and now I'm a huge believer. Listen, I still think 90% of them are liars and fakes, but there are a few mediums out there that truly are gifted and truly are tapping into something. Because how would you know the fucking breed of my childhood dog? There's no way in hell. There's no way anyone knew that I took sweaters and my mom's jacket from her closet. So I certainly want to believe that there's something after this crazy life. I think I've taken bits and pieces of the religions that mean something to me to kind of create my own belief system. But I definitely think that we get to go on and our energy gets to do cool things like freak people out when we're no longer here on this plane.
After hearing all that, though, I want to ask, who do you think are the people that get to see ghosts or get to have these experiences? Does it have to do with the connection they had to people in life? Or is it just kind of a random thing like at the hotel? Because like they clearly didn't have a relationship to the previous people that lived there, but they are having experiences.
Yeah, some people really feel like they have this intuition, right? And it's funny because I get a lot of them at our paranormal events. For example, our basement can get a little musty at the end. So I plugged in an air freshener before one of our events. And this woman walked in and she's like, I'm getting a strong sense of perfume. Is anyone else getting that? And I'm like, oh, it might be the air freshener. I think a lot of people want to see what they want to see, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people that come to a haunted mansion looking for experiences will find them. But then you can't argue the people that weren't looking for experiences, that see stuff or feel stuff or sense stuff. So it's there. It's definitely there. It's been proven to me time and time again that it's there. And I don't know why some people get chosen and some don't. I definitely believe that some people have just absolutely turned off that channel. They're like, nope, I'm not open to it. I'm not receptive to it. And even if I do experience something, it didn't happen because that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You think about children who haven't turned off those channels yet, who seem to be very receptive to spirits and energy, or animals who definitely see things. My assistant manager brings her dog to work often, and he always just points at the basement, won't go down there. He senses it too, for sure. And we're a dog-friendly establishment as well. So a couple guests have reported that their dogs sense things. So I don't know what the answer is. I think some people just are adamant about shutting it off and not paying attention to it. And other people are just like, yeah, I'm open to it. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. It's just so strange because you'll hear these stories over and over again, especially doing the show. I've heard so many of these stories, and just to have them confirmed by people that have never met each other, there's a trend forming, and it's so strange to see.
Yeah, definitely. I love when non-believers become believers. And I think the medium that I had met with sensed big time that I was a skeptic. But I had gone to her because a friend of mine had gone to her, and the things that she said, it's like, yeah, no one would know that. No one could know that. So I trusted that she was possibly one of those few with that gift, but I was not prepared for how good she was. To me, it just confirmed that there's something after here. And I hope it's awesome. And I hope I get to haunt people,
I know, right?
I definitely will. If that's an option for me, I will.
Another theory that we play with is that for some of these things, yes, there's a consciousness, you can actually interact with something that seems to be interacting back. But if we're talking about afterlife, I think when people die, all of their lived experiences are contained within their soul or energy, their existence embodied. And I think that you don't take all of that with you. The CPU of the person goes up to heaven, but all of those lived experiences, the energy related to that kind of stays down here.
Yeah. And I think that's what the paranormal groups that have come through have told me, this energy is attached to these stones. I used to live, when I was in Jersey, by a lake that was said to have a lot of ghosts attached to that. And I just think that's absolutely true. That energy is stuck there. Maybe it's playing in a loop, or maybe it's just can't go anywhere. It's energy. It doesn't die. So when we have experiences, a little bit of that energy rubs off in that location of that experience, and then it doesn't go anywhere. It can't. So I believe that too. And I've wondered, a lot of people say well, if a spirit's here, then it hasn't moved on. I don't think that's true. I believe what you believe. Your spirit can certainly move on if there's a better place than this plane. I hope that my mom's spirit is having a great time, but that they can also kind of communicate in ways to this dimension. And that's a nice thought, right? I think also if not only love, but something incredibly tragic, if there's a violent murder in a home, I think that energy stays in that home as well, and things can happen as a result of it. Whereas I'm seeing Karens as a result of the energy of my mom's love still being around me. I think a person who's in a house where a violent crime or something horrible happened can definitely feel that energy as well.
Having managed other establishments, have you ever had that experience of you go into a certain room to check on something and you feel something really strange in there, and then you find out that maybe a crime had been committed there, or just there was something very untoward that went down?
Yeah. When I first got into hospitality, I worked at a huge conference center, and we were setting up for a luncheon in one of the spaces, and I just started to get this weird feeling, and the one tablecloth started flapping like there was a fan blowing on it. And I just didn't like anything that was happening at that moment, and I got the hell out of there. And I was talking to a coworker about it. I said, man, I got a really weird feeling in that conference room, and one of the tablecloths was moving around. And they were like, oh yeah, the conference room and the hallway are haunted because, and this is a terrible story, there was a wedding, and the best man like punched the bride's uncle and he freaking died.
Holy.
Like they were all drunk. So imagine on your wedding day, there's a fight and one of your family members dies. The fight started in the conference room because it was set up for the wedding, and then it kind of tumbled out into the hallway, and he had such a terrible head injury, he like essentially like bled out in the hallway. And when the paramedics came, they couldn't save him. So they all said that it was him that was kind of occupying that space. And I will say, like, it wasn't a great feeling. I didn't feel like it was a spirit. I actually thought there was like an animal under the table. Like I got this bad feeling like I was in danger. And then I was like, oh God, there's probably like a freaking rat under that table or something. Not like the place had rats, not at all. But like, I didn't know what the hell that was. Why was the tablecloth moving? And then I never experienced anything again. But I guess I was like one of my guests that has no idea that something's there. And then you're like, oh, I just had an experience.
I wonder how many people kind of have those experiences too. Is like, oh, I guess the breeze hit that table in a weird way. And then they just don't think about it anymore.
Right. Like I said, people that have just like shut it off and would never equate that to being some sort of spirit or energy. They're just like, oh, that's weird. I'm going to go on with my day.
And I think that's something you kind of learn is just to listen to your gut. Like, yeah. I guess you become a lot more attuned to things.
I think we unlearn it. I think we're born with, hey, listen to your gut. Go back to like the caveman or tribal days where instinct was survival. But we have so many distractions now and everything else going on that we don't really listen to our gut anymore. I think we've unlearned instinct, and some of us are just more in tune with our gut than others. I am definitely a gut person. I don't have a good feeling about something, I'm not doing it. But yeah, I mean, overall, I'm not scared of my job. It's interesting for sure. It keeps me on my toes. Things happen and we kind of just chuckle it off and go about our day. But there's no denying that there's energy there for sure.
Yeah. And it seems like every time you have a paranormal investigator go there, they get stuff.
Yeah. And every time it's just like further confirmation, like, okay, yeah, this place has energy.
I also wanted to ask, do you have scary experiences that like are just very much people related? Because people are the weirdest people. Like you never know what you're going to get as far as like providing room and board to strangers.
Oh, tell me about it. I will say my current property, we cater to like an upscale clientele, but the property I managed directly before this one, and I talk about it a lot on the Insiders podcast that I do with my friend Rob, it was a discount extended stay chain. So a lot of people were living there, which means you get to know people because you're seeing them every day for months and months and months. Some people live there for years. But we also would get people that were like fresh out of jail or rehabs, because jails will give information for like extended stay hotels if people are getting out and they don't have anywhere to go. So I would get a lot of people like fresh out of other living situations. And unfortunately, I would get a lot of people that had like severe mental health issues and they didn't have any other resources. So they would kind of land at my property. So I dealt with a lot of people that had interesting perspectives on life. And there was one guy, he was wearing, I guess you'd call it like steampunk, a top hat with really cool like goggles.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, oh, I really like your style. And as soon as he looked at me, have you ever thought to yourself, like, shit, I should not have engaged in a conversation with this person?
Yeah, like, you opened up a whole
like you're at the bar.
World of hurt.
Exactly. You're at the bar and you strike up a conversation with the person next to you and like immediately regret it. That was one of those moments. I was like, oh no, here we go. So he is just so excited that I said I liked his style that he had to show me a bunch of videos on his phone of airplanes. It was just airplanes in the night sky. And he's like, I can see demons. He's like, I want to show you these videos of the demons coming down to earth at night that I summon and I protect the earth from. He's like, without my work, the earth would be overrun with demons. And I wanted to say so badly, those are fucking airplanes. But, you know, you don't want to...
You don't know what kind of anger this guy's going to have when you tell him he's not special.
He's very passionate that this was his calling and his life's work, and I did not want to poo-poo it and upset him. So I was just like pretending to be very enthralled, like, wow, yeah, wow, look at that one. And this was last night? Oh my goodness, wow. Well, thank you for the work you do. Like, I don't know, what, I just play along to save myself. Like, yeah, I encountered a lot of personalities at that property, and I was just always very gracious and delicate because I don't know why someone thinks the way they think. I don't know their life experience that brings them to think that they are protecting the earth from demons, but I'm just going to play along so that they stay happy and they're not, attacking me through the front desk, but it pays the bills, right? I really enjoyed being a guest on your podcast. I think that I mentioned I also have a podcast called The Insiders. That's INN. It's a little play on words because the podcast is all about hospitality, people that work in hotels talking about crazy stories with guests that have stayed or experiences in the industry. So if you or anyone you know works in the hotel hospitality travel industry and wants to be a guest or wants to listen to those kinds of stories, you can check us out at theinsiders.com. And again, that's INNsiders.com.
Very punny. You're also really good with the episode names.
Oh my God, that's all Rob. He is just so damn clever, and he'll bounce off title ideas to me, and I'm like, where do you come up with this shit? He's the best.
My favorite has to be Nutsack Gun, the very first episode. That's the best name ever.
I mean, I'm a little biased because that episode is solely just my stories, but yeah, that's one of my favorites too, because I got to tell the world the shit that I experienced at that property.
Yeah, I don't know that any job is worth all that.
Oh, hell no. No. I will hang out with the ghosts over hanging out with anyone at that property any day.
The fact that so many people dye their hair in rooms is like, is everyone on the lam? Like, what the hell's going on here? Scott Peterson's back?
I know. It's nuts. The first time I experienced it, I'm like, what the hell happened in here? And then you're like, oh, this is a thing? What? Do it at home. Get it. But thank you so much for having me on. And
yeah, thanks very much for coming on. I really wanted to have an episode like this. Having a scary story podcast, you kind of have an idea in your head of all the things you want to have on the show. Like, I really want the Skinwalker episode, but haunted landmarks are always cool.
Thanks so much for having me on, and I'm looking forward to listening to the episode.
Sounds like that's the end there, folks. We'll see you next time. Now those were some frightfully fun stories. Howdy everybody, it's me, your host Danny, and I wanted to let you in on something special. You might have noticed that when I introduce the show, I say we are the Hometown Horrors Podcast. That's because there will always be at least 3 people in each episode. Me, the person who wants to hear a good story, the guest, the teller of a good story, and you, the listener, that takes that story and carries it with you out into the world. And we make up a special kind of trinity. We are the Hometown Horrors Podcast. And if you ever want to graduate from listener to guest, reach out to us via our handle on Instagram, hometown_horrors_podcast. Our email is thehometownhorrorspodcast, no spaces, @gmail.com, or via text or phone call at 571-358-8880, which FYI is not my personal number, but give it a ring. I'll get back to you, because if there's anything I've learned from doing the podcast is that everybody has a story, and that story deserves to be heard. On your number one source for the most spine-tingling, gut-wrenching, insomnia-inducing stories around, the Hometown Horrors Podcast.